Hey friends, welcome back to Good Roots here at Harvest United Methodist Church. I'm Nick Lee, the lead pastor here, and we're really glad you're with us for this podcast. And I think, personally, that we have a awesome guest with us. I'm partial to her because she's in fact my boss. The Reverend Dr. Debbie Allen is with us today. I'm really thankful she took some time out of your schedule to come and be with us, so thank you for being here today.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
So we are still in the middle of our series called The Practices. We're working on formational things that we need to do. And so just Sunday I talked about the idea that we practice things to form us to be more faithfully followers of Jesus Christ. And today we're talking about the practice of rest. And since you know me so well, you know that this is one of the areas that is a growth edge for me.
Yes.
Yes. I am not always the most restful person in the world. I don't always take those Sabbaths. So I figured it would be probably better if you came and talked about it than just me talking about it. So let's just jump in really quickly. Will you define for us, when we talk about a practice of rest or what rest looks like for us as believers, how would you define rest for us?
Yeah. So I think it's in the root of the word.
Okay.
Sabbath comes from the Hebrew word Shabbat,
Okay.
and it is really about the cessation of things. It is really about stopping. So many times we think about Sabbath as like just rest
Yeah.
and not participating in certain things. But it really is more than just like passive rest. It's a stopping of our striving.
Okay.
It's a stopping of our need to be productive every moment and prove our value
Yeah.
and our worth.
Okay.
And so trying to find ways that we can Sabbath in ways that are actually not our usual practice
Okay.
of things, and also find ways to renew our spirit and our soul,
Okay.
our relationship with God.
So you said a couple of things that I think would be interesting for us to kind of delve into. So you talked about stopping the idea of striving for, like, it feels like for just a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Um, it feels bad for me to think of the idea of stopping striving at any point.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder, as somebody who I look to model rest for me,
Yeah.
why do you think we struggle so much with the idea of stopping just to take a rest?
Oh, yeah. Well, I was not always good at this either.
Okay.
So, in early ministry, I've been in ministry for 25 years now. Early in ministry, I was a self described workaholic
Yeah.
and always on and always doing all the things. And I think there's a couple of reasons why sometimes we find it really hard to stop. One is often our work becomes our identity, and we don't know who we are outside of the things that we're able to do and we're able to accomplish.
Yeah.
Some of us were raised in families where not being busy or productive was seen as being lazy.
Right.
And so we have this little voice in our head that says if we stop and sit down on the couch for a little bit and we're not constantly working on something, that there's something wrong with us.
Right.
So if
Yeah.
we get the whole day's list of things done and we have 20 minutes to sit on the couch, we're starting to think about the next
next
day's
thing.
list
Yeah.
already and what can we work on getting off of that. The other thing is also, I think that sometimes people they do have a trauma response to how they grew up, and if they were always really struggling to be seen, if they were struggling to feel loved. A lot of times you get great kudos for all the things that you can do and the things that you accomplish. And so we kind of replace that with trying to fill up the little empty spots, inside of us.
So this occurred to me. So we just celebrated an annual conference, 70 years of women being ordained in the United Methodist Church, and you've been in ministry for a good amount of time. So I wonder if some of that guilt or the pushback against not striving at all times comes from the need to produce, like to hold your space. Because I know sometimes I feel guilty and feel like I've got to outwork to make sure that people know that I'm important, or not even important, but that like I add value. Do you feel like that ever
Right.
happens?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's something that definitely clergy women have struggled with in spaces and places is often if one of our male colleagues makes a mistake in ministry, then that's just kind of seen as okay, that was one person, one thing. But when a clergy woman, especially a clergy woman who's the first clergy woman in a church, makes a mistake, it is somehow held against every other single clergy woman that will come after them. It's a pronouncement upon our gender and our value, and they don't want to try that again, right? So we do carry in some ways some extra weight of expectation and responsibility that makes us lean into trying to do all the things because we're trying to help people understand and see that women really are called and gifted for ministry.
So I wonder. So before we actually get into talking about what could constitute activities for rest and those kind of things, I wonder what you would say to folks who are watching or listening in their cars, who go, but I feel so guilty about taking rest. Is there something you would say to those of us who carry a modicum of guilt every time we think about, and not just vacation, like any kind of rest? What would you say to us?
Oh, that we have to be willing to sit in some of that discomfort at times. And that we have to be willing to kind of ask the questions, why is it that stopping is so hard for me? But I think that the scriptures give us this huge invitation to rest, to stop. The Sabbath commandment actually has more explanation than any of the other commandments attached to it. It's like God understood that we would struggle in some ways with this. And so here's a lot of examples about what you're supposed to do. But it really is an invitation for us that's pretty countercultural. And it was even for the people that it was first given to. The Hebrews had been slaves in Egypt for about 400 years. So that's several generations of folks who were never allowed to rest. Who their entire identity was wrapped up in constant productivity, or they were severely punished for it, right? And God takes them out, and as he's moving them to the promised land, the Ten Commandments were intended to help shape a new community, a new what were God's expectations of them. And one of them is this incredible gift of rest and stopping from earning it. And so we don't have to feel guilty about that. The creation order that we often think about is 7 days of creation and then rest, almost as if God earned the day off by all the things that he did before. But if you think about it and back up a little bit from it, he began with rest, and then there was creation activity, and then he went back to rest. And so we don't have to earn our rest. It's a natural state in between all of the times of productivity. That's the model that we get in creation.
And it's really funny. So I want to name for folks who are engaging in this. I am sitting in the room with you listening to you say this, and I can feel the expansive nature of the scripture, and rest coming first is not something you earn, and still in me there is this like
Oh,
icky feeling about it.
yeah. I think one of the things that's helpful too for people when you start, I said I struggled with it, workaholic, um, very much a type A kind of person. People who know me know I have lists and they're color coded and there's multiple tabs on the spreadsheet for all the things. And I
Yes.
still operate in that way of organization and planning. But there's a slightly different rhythm
Yeah.
to my life than the constant pressure. But when I started really trying to incorporate Sabbath, I didn't start with a whole 24 hours
Okay.
off
All right.
because when you're an all go no stop kind of person and suddenly you just stop and you don't have any kind of
Yeah.
guidelines for what that looks like, oh my gosh, that is massively uncomfortable, and it will turn you off to trying to do it
Yeah.
again, right? So starting small, a few hours, a
Yeah.
half a day, you have to build into it. It's a
It
practice
is a practice.
that you
Yeah.
have to build into and build up to.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing for people is knowing what can you do on Sabbath,
Yeah.
because if you have this idea that you just have to sit at home and do nothing, that will drive everyone
Yeah.
crazy. But there's things that you can do that will help nurture renewal for your soul and connection to Jesus, and it's finding ways to incorporate some of those things.
I want to come back to that part about what you can do, but so the culture. So we're folks who live in a context and a culture, right? And it feels like right now, especially, and I'm kind of in the sandwich generation, and you kind of are too, in the
Yeah.
sense that my parents, like, we worked, and then took 2 weeks of vacation in the summer, and then went back to work.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said earlier, this is countercultural. And so it feels like, and it's been said before, that rest is an act of resistance. And I
Yes.
wonder if you would kind of give us your take on what we're actually resisting against as we make the practice of rest in our own lives.
Yeah. So I have learned so much from a woman that they call the nap minister.
Okay.
And she actually wrote a book called Rest is Resistance.
Okay.
And she's an African American woman.
Okay.
And she ties it into all of the, capitalism,
Yeah.
patriarchy, all of these kinds of things that where people's time and energy and effort really doesn't belong to them.
Yeah.
And so she talks about just how it is a form of resistance to stop
Yeah.
and to not buy into the world's cycle of constant productivity and also constant availability. That's another piece that's become so hard in the last 10 years, especially with the phones that we carry
Yeah.
around and the text messages and the emails. You used to be able to leave work and outside of a true emergency,
Yeah.
you were able to power down in the evenings, even in the beginning of my ministry. And now I get text messages late at night, early in the morning. That app is just sitting there with the little notification numbers about emails, and I
Yes.
feel like I should respond
Yeah.
to things. And so, yeah, finding ways to carve out practices to help you protect your availability and your productivity, because we are made for this rhythm
Right.
of work and then rest, and we need to share it. And I just think we have so many people who are tired, like soul weary tired,
Yeah.
something that a nap doesn't fix.
I just heard that. I was watching a TikTok, and a young lady, she was very serious. She said, for all of my friends out there, a nap won't fix the fact that your soul is tired.
Yeah. And so I think Sabbath is something that people are really hungering for and they don't know that they need it.
Yeah.
And and I think one of the best practices that we can engage in for Sabbath in our lives is to put some boundaries around our availability and our screen time, right? To be able to help us in that these days.
Okay, so since we're going down this path, we'll go back to the idea of what constitutes Sabbath and what are the activities you can do. Because, there's some of us, I'm not calling any names in this room, sometimes doom scroll, but it's not restful.
Right.
It's just a distraction.
Yeah.
And so, what are some of the things, A, that you do in Sabbath as activity, and what were some things you would tell us as we're unplugging from the world? I love the boundary around availability. I'm terrible at it because it does feel like when you've got your phone, every email, every text, every message constitutes an emergency, and you want to be responsive.
Right.
So, what are the things? I know a couple of things that you do for rest, but I want you to tell them, and then what are
Sure.
some of the other things you would say to us that might be that we could constitute Sabbath as?
Yeah. So I tried again to think about Sabbath as things that are renewing or life giving.
Okay.
Um, Saturdays, I typically, if I'm home, I'm able to get up and I go to yoga
Okay.
in the morning. And then after yoga, I find a labyrinth nearby. There's several in Sarasota, prayer labyrinths, and I walk those. I find that I can concentrate better in my prayer life when I'm physically moving.
Yeah.
And a labyrinth doesn't have dead ends or choices. It just goes straight into the center. So I can turn off the part of my brain that has to and just follow in, and I can really connect better with God. So that's always a practice. And then I tend to journal and I follow the practice of the examine.
Yeah.
And I do the weekly examine, just kind of reflecting back through my week to sort of close out the week mentally and then start to look ahead and think towards the next week. How do I want to show up? How do I want to feel connected to God and to other people in that next week? So those are some of the things that I try to do on a pretty regular basis. When I was coaching some clergy women a couple of years ago, and we were all sort of wrestling with this idea about how to Sabbath and what could you do, one of the clergy women shared in the group that she put together a list on her phone of things that she wanted to do, that she could do, that she would enjoy, so that by the time she got to her Sabbath, which for her was Friday, and she was in decision fatigue mode and didn't want to get to the end of Friday and have just sat on the couch and doom scrolled because she couldn't figure out what to do, she could look at the list and figure out what did she have the energy for of some of these things. And she gave herself permission to keep a beach chair in the back of her car and a blanket and a book, and she would sometimes find herself just going to sit by herself at the water and read for a little bit, right? I mean, we live in Southwest Florida. There is so much beauty around us in parks and at the beach and trails and all kinds of things. And sometimes those of us who live here are guilty of never enjoying those except when people come to town to visit. And so finding ways to, if being outside in nature renews your soul, that's a great Sabbath practice. Some people love to cook and don't have the time to do it the way they want to during the week when kids' schedules and all the other things are crazy. And so for them, cooking, would be a soul renewing practice. I mean, I think we used to think of it as, there were very specific things that you could do, but if gardening is your jam, then do that, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are the things that are going to help you really renew your soul? And maybe things that you don't get to on a regular basis.
Yeah, I do also like the idea because what we haven't really said, like, there's been kind of a mix on what you've been talking about. It hasn't been like overly spiritual. Like, I think some of folks think that Sabbath is the day that you sit and just have to read copious amounts of scripture, or um, I don't know if it was you that said this, but like I think you're going on like a silent retreat at some point, right?
Yeah,
And to me, that sounds like punching me in the face.
it would
Um,
have to me about 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I'm learning though that like
Yeah.
the older I get and the more time I spend in ministry and just being a dad and a husband, there are now times where I'm like, I wish somebody would let me just sit in a corner and be silent. But I appreciate like for all of us that you're kind of talking about these. Some of these things about rest are just like you're a human, and there are things that bring you joy, and God wants you to find that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our physical body can't really be separated from our spiritual,
Yeah,
life, and so they feed off of one another, and silence is a good way to sometimes,
yeah,
it's a good practice.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm going on renewal leave this summer for the first time, which is, you're eligible like every 6-8 years
Right.
of full-time
Yeah.
ministry, and I've never taken one.
Mm.
And so I'm about halfway through my time as a district superintendent, and it felt like this would be a good season to do that and really kind of disconnect from some things
Yeah.
and concentrate on some renewal so that I can come back really strong for the next season
Yeah.
of ministry. And I'm going to start the time away with 48 hours of a silent retreat at a monastery up
Yeah.
in Georgia.
Yeah. When you said that to us, I was like, but again, what I think you've said to everybody, and including myself, like for all of you who are watching this, know that this is somewhat selfish. I kind of wanted just to sit and talk with you about this because I have become more aware of needing, in order to show up more fully for folks,
Mm-hmm.
I've learned through much trial and fire that if I haven't found enough rest and Sabbath, I can't show up for people fully.
Yeah.
And so, but it's kind of incremental, right? You started with, you said, don't, 24 hours might kill you if you try to right off.
Yeah.
And maybe in a couple of years, I'll be ready to sit. And 48 hours quiet it doesn't sound terrible. It does feel a little weird.
Maybe we could just start with you taking all of your
Oh,
vacation time
yeah,
throughout the
yeah.
year.
We can cut that if you guys want. No, I'm just kidding. She's right. You're right. But a lot of it is, and a lot of it for me, and I'm sure for a lot of folks who are watching, I think of every time that I get ready to go take rest, I think to myself, there's stuff that could be done. Um, you and I are somewhat in the same boat. I've got 4 kids, and they are running everywhere, doing all sorts of
Yeah.
stuff. Um, and even though you said something about decision fatigue, being in ministry, you sit in so many different seats where you're in charge,
Mm-hmm.
um, and the idea of even trying to decide what to do for Sabbath is almost agonizing in itself because all we do is make decisions. And I'm sure there are a lot of families out there that feel the same way, mom and dad.
Right.
I think of moms all over who are working, holding down jobs, who were maybe they are home builders, but even in that, like there are so many decisions that have to be made.
Absolutely.
And the idea to take rest away from decision, I would just like a rest from decision making every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I like how you said like this person said to you that they write it out throughout the week so that when it comes time to do it, it's not another decision to be made.
Right.
So it sounds like you're telling us that we have to plan the practice of rest.
I think it works better when we do.
Yeah.
because, and you can block it off on your calendar. Anybody can. And if somebody, short of some kind of an emergency where somebody dies, right? When people try to bump onto something that might be on your schedule, and you've got a Sabbath chunk scheduled, all you have to say to people is, I already have an appointment at that time.
Right.
You don't have to clarify what the appointment is. And see if you can work out a different time, rather than what I used to do, which is feel guilty because that felt selfish because this was my thing. And so then I would turn myself inside out to try and be available, to everybody else. And then I would get to the end of the week and not have had any time for myself to be renewed.
We've used the word guilty a couple of times.
Yeah.
And it almost feels like that guilt is outside of what God intended for us. It's almost like, again, we have to resist the guilt because the guilt is trying to keep us from something that God created us to do.
Yeah.
And that's tough. Like, dealing with the guilt of taking rest is difficult. So we've talked about rest. We've talked about things you can do. So the reason why we talked about practices was because we wanted to talk about formation, like the Christian life and its formation. I wonder if you would kind of walk through how you think rest is a formational piece in the life of a follower of Jesus Christ. We know that rest is good for everybody, but specifically for us who are trying to be a part of, making disciples for the transformation of the world. And we're trying to, be a part of seeing the redemption of all creation with God. How does rest factor into us being formed into that?
Yeah, Sabbath rest is a reminder on a weekly basis, hopefully, that God is God and we are not. We have this tendency to think that if we don't do it, it won't get done. Or if we don't orchestrate it, it won't get done. And that shortchanges the Holy Spirit, who is always at work, right? And so it's just a beautiful reminder that God is the one who is ultimately working, and we're partners in ministry with him. All of us, from dedicated lay people to clergy, right? We're all partners in ministry, and it does not mean that we have to be constantly productive in order to make things happen. In fact, when I take time out, even to play, like one of my spaces and places to play, I like to go to Disney. I like to hang out. That's relaxing for me. I know that would be stressful for other people too, right?
Could be, yes.
But the thing about Disney is is the reminder of like looking at the world through the eyes of a child. And the wonder. And when I'm able to disconnect from all the pressure, disconnect from all the media stuff, and really be renewed, oh my goodness, I'm so much more creative than when I am fried from just this state of constant doing, right? So many great ideas that surface when I'm not trying to make them happen either.
And I heard the sound of a trust in God. That almost Sabbath is a way for us to just trust in God.
Yeah. I was serving in a church that was years ago that was experiencing tremendous financial pressure. I was stressed out beyond belief trying to fix it. Now, they'd been experiencing this for several years before I got there, but I was the one who kind of said, we actually have to do something about this. And I was really trying to make all these things work, and it, holding all of it together. And I went through this huge period of insomnia where I couldn't sleep at night because I was just constantly obsessed and worried about how to fix it. So much so that I wasn't really praying very much about how to navigate
Yeah.
this, right? It had just become this huge pressure that was always sitting there. And one night I was so tired and so weary, and I could not turn my brain off and I could not sleep. And then all of a sudden it felt like God was saying, "Do you trust me?"
Mm.
And I was like, "Oh, well, I do,
Mm.
but I sure haven't been acting like it
Yeah.
lately, right?"
Yeah.
And so I finally said to God, "Okay, they're yours. They were yours before I got here. They're gonna be yours after I'm appointed somewhere else. I'm giving them back to you
Yeah.
overnight,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna go to bed."
Yeah.
And I was able to rest in that sense. But I do think it sometimes can be a real trust issue of trusting that things will still happen,
Yeah.
even when you're not the one who is orchestrating them. And sometimes, you know, people, not just in church, but people in our homes, people in our families, other people need to pick up some things. Sometimes we take on too much. You know, I had to learn that with teenage children,
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
About like, was I over functioning with some of them, and giving some things back to them? Again, it's trust.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think sometimes the heart of us not being able to rest really is a trust issue.
So it makes me think of like my kids at night, they go to their rooms. Well, the little ones, not so much. Like we have to herd them. But at the end of the day, they just fall asleep. And part of the reason is because they trust that
Mm-hmm.
we as their parents have taken care of them. And so, like, as you were saying that, I was thinking to myself, hey, like, what would happen if you just trusted God enough to go sit on the beach?
Yeah.
Like that is a measure of trust. And
Right.
now it feels like a measure of formation. Like not only like we started talking about rest as formation,
Mm-hmm.
but now it's like in the rest I'm also learning to trust God in
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's I'm see I knew it was you were the right person to have this conversation
Thank
with.
you.
I just knew it.
I am still learning every single day about this, and I try really hard to give myself grace in it. Um, Kind of going back to the root word that we were talking about too, the the whole Jewish understanding of practicing Sabbath is all about the sanctification of time.
Mm,
And we
mm,
talk about our own sanctification and
yeah,
Christ being us being made over in the image of Christ, but can our time be redeemed in that way also,
mm,
right? That's a part of this
mm,
Sabbath invitation
yeah,
to stop trying to be so productive
yeah,
all of the time.
yeah. See, I'm learning. Even in this, I'm learning from this. The other thing, as you were talking earlier, I thought to myself, in all of this, as we're talking directly about rest, is um, I wonder what rest does. So you've kind of named it a little bit, but I wonder what rest does for us, even in just being able to be available when it's time for God to like do some things that He wants us to partner in. I think you said earlier that like in rest, it gives you the ability to be creative,
Mm-hmm.
and it almost feels like it gives you the ability to be more human too.
Yeah.
Um, and and yet it will still be a struggle for us because it you said the word earn, and I know like we're getting close to the end of our time together, but there's a part of me, and I'm sure this is true for some folks who are watching or listening, that we have to keep doing things to let God know that we are worthy of all of the things. So I think some of my guilt and other folks I've talked to, the guilt comes from in the absence of production, how do I prove to my Creator that I was worthy of the task of being pastor, husband, and father? I'm sure you've struggled with that
Yeah.
because all of us do. So, what would you say to the folks who are going, okay, hey, this is really great. I got to see two people I know are really working on things, but like, I got to be productive. Like, I got to earn God's love for me even through my work. What would you say to us?
Oh, yeah. I tried really hard after I almost burned out in one ministry setting, to fix my practices, to fix all of the things, to set good boundaries, to do all of that. And I still struggled
Yeah.
with self care and Sabbath and rest. And it was this idea that somebody introduced me to about our belovedness,
Mm,
that started to really help. Remembering that we're made in the imago Dei
mm,
of God,
yeah.
that we were good, pronounced good before we produced anything,
Yeah.
um, and that Jesus was too
Mm,
before he ever did anything in ministry,
yeah.
right? When the Holy Spirit descends like a dove
Yeah.
at his baptism, this is my beloved son in whom I'm well pleased.
Yeah.
He hasn't done anything.
Nothing. Yeah.
I mean, and yet there's the pronouncement
Yeah.
that we are loved because of who we are, because we are made in God's image,
Yeah.
and we do not have to earn that belovedness,
Yeah.
which is, again, so countercultural to
Yeah.
everything the world around us tells us. They're screaming at us all the time
Yeah.
that we need to do this and do that and maximize all of our productivity all of the time. And
Yeah.
there's so many ways to help teach leaders how to do that,
Yep.
right? And
Yep.
business executives and all of the things.
Mm,
And even systems to try and help homemakers, maximize their schedules and cleaning and all of the other pieces,
yeah.
right? That everybody's trying to sell us something,
Yep.
and God is saying, before you do any of that other stuff,
Mm,
you are beloved just because you are mine,
yeah.
and no matter what you do, you are loved.
Yeah.
That's the grace that God offers to us. And
Yeah.
so having to go back and remind ourselves from time to time, however that works for you, that this is all an invitation,
Mm,
and that we never have to earn our belovedness.
yeah.
And we can just rest in that and
Yeah.
rest in God.
That's good. I feel like we could talk about this forever, but in the interest of time and people's attention span, mine included, I wonder as we kind of close out. So I hope that folks, as they've listened, are going to be really considering rest and how they could incorporate this practice and just kind of lean into it. What's one thing you would leave us with? Like, if you could say anything to us about rest, the practice, the formation, any of it, what was one thing you would say to us that's really important for us to hold on to as we consider a practice of rest, leaning into rest, resisting the complex around us? What would you say to us?
I would say, I think that's two secrets to trying to begin to practice it
Okay.
are to plan a little bit for it,
Okay.
whether that's carving out some time, whether that's making your own list of what's life-giving,
Yep.
right? But to begin to plan for it, and then to find somebody that you love and trust who will help hold you accountable
Mm.
for it.
Mm.
And check in with you about it, because without sometimes that outside factor,
Yeah.
we can tell ourselves a lot of good stories and
Mm.
excuses.
Yeah.
So whether that's a friend or a spouse or people in your Sunday school class or
Yeah.
your small group, right? that would be though that's going to be the keys that will help
Yeah.
people begin to really lean into this practice if it's something that you've never done
That's good.
before.
That's good. I think that's a good place. And thank you so much for doing this. Um, I'm going to do better. At least I'm going to try.
And we will lovingly continue to hold you
I know
accountable
you will.
for that.
I know you will. I love it. So, hey, I want to say to y'all who are here watching, wherever you're watching at YouTube, Facebook, listening online, thank you for taking some time out. I really do hope that for you, you'll find a way to start practicing rest. All of us are on this journey together because rest is so countercultural, but I'm hoping and praying for you that as you've heard, you've listened, you've contemplated, you'll start taking some of these pieces and start building a practice and a habit of rest. And we also hope you'll come back again and join us for the next Good Roots podcast. Thanks so much for being with us today.